One of the best headlines in a decade, if not 2 decades, was in the Toronto Sun this week when they're talking about who's governing us, the bureaucrats or the politicians. It's not exactly what they said, but Brian Lilley wrote the article, and he joins me right now because he knows what was said. Your concern is, as the concern is of many, many people, is that, yes, we're going to deal with the medical science, but really, who's calling the shots or the non-shots?
Yeah, do we live in a democracy or a doctatorship? And right now, if you listen to the Premier of Ontario, it's a doctatorship. Because I asked him this week about reopening kids' sports, and he said, well, I've got to get the green light from Dr. Williams. And I followed up with, well, at what point does your responsibility kick in? And he went on a long rant about how he can't go out ahead of the doctors, and he's got to work with the doctors. And on one hand, I understand, especially from the political point of view, but he's the elected official. But whether we're talking the Premier, Mayor Tory, Justin Trudeau, they all hide behind the doctors, so we're living in a dictatorship.
It's like saying during World War II, the generals are going to run the war without Roosevelt and Churchill, and they would have run it into the ground. I mean, you do have political leaders who take into account not only the medical science, but all the other sciences to make a decision. And have they advocated that in Ontario?
I think they have. I think they've done it all over the country to varying degrees, but yeah, in Ontario we have. And look, Stephen, you and I come at politics from different viewpoints, but we both love democracy.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, it's got to be the elected officials in charge. I've got people telling me that it's just a right-wing talking point that doctors should advise and not be in charge. No, it's not. That is a democratic talking point. And if you love democracy, the medical experts should advise. The experts always advise, but the politicians decide.
Brian, I would argue that as right-wing dogma to say the doctors should make the decisions because they're unelected. They are supposedly the experts, and yet they aren't the experts in the economy or in mental health or in education, all the other things that go into the decision.
And in my view, too often, the public health officials are just looking at COVID numbers. Well, what about the suicide numbers, suicide attempt numbers? I know that bankruptcies have not gone up the way that we expected. That's a good thing. But other aspects of people struggling because they've lost their jobs, they've lost work, they've lost opportunities, they've lost the ability to connect.
And kids not able to go to schools, and they're at home wondering, what's going on? Why can't I see any friends? Why can't I socialize? Why can't I do sports? So there's a huge cost. Everybody knows there's a huge cost. The question is now, how to get out of it with the least cost.
I think we have to start looking at examples like BC, because people will say, you can't do Florida, we can't do Sweden. Fine, British Columbia, they've never fully shut down retail, restaurants, or kids' sports. They also have a lower death rate than Ontario, and a lower case count rate per capita. That's a model.
Brian Lilley, fabulous, 3 minutes. This pandemic is serving to make governments at all levels bigger. And with bigger governments, you have reduced liberties, which means you really need an independent press, because without an independent press paid for by Justin Trudeau, you aren't going to be hearing about the abuses in government. And that's what this is all about. It's important to know what is going on with our country. And so, I have to pay for the crew and have to pay for the equipment. We want to continue this service. And we're appealing to you to make some donations to help us out. You can pay through the PayPal, which is right below this, and we'll be very grateful in order to keep this going so that we know what is happening to Canada.